Well, good evening, folks. This is Dave Schmidt. I'm your host here again tonight on the Cosmic Connections. I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight here on the October 28th program. Now, I am, they're live on Facebook, and somebody says that the picture's a little blurry. Well, I'm not at home in Florida. I'm actually in Sedona. I'm back here, visiting friends and taking care of some business. But the internet connection of where I am at is really weak. So the video might not be really good quality tonight, but the sound is there. But also, folks, if you want to remember, you can always go over to Blog Talk Radio because the sound will come through very well there on Blog Talk Radio. But all of you are saying that everything sounds good on Facebook, and I want to say thank you to everybody that's making the comments that are there. So, with that, Blanca, how are you doing this fine evening across the country in Atlanta, Georgia?
We're doing good. We're expecting a little bit of rain and maybe some heavy winds later this night, but we'll see what that's like. Other than that, we're doing okay. And for some reason, I told you it's probably because of the internet. Sometimes you sound a little choppy, but I think we're going to be able to understand you.
Yeah, we'll be fine. And it does come through on the recording on Blog Talk Radio. I mean, so that will always be good. That's there. So, well, it was a little different being here in
Good.
Sedona. When you're in southern Florida, you truly are in a subtropical climate, and it just stays warm all year round. And well, I came into Sedona, and it was nice, clear weather. But because they're in the mountains in northern Arizona, a cold front can come in, and it got cold. It was down to 34 degrees here last night, and I thought, ooh, that was chilly for me. I haven't experienced 34 degrees in a couple of years, so it was a little different being here, but it's always nice to be back in my former home in Sedona and visiting all the wonderful friends that are there. So, well, Blanca, what else do you have going on here tonight? Because I don't have a whole lot of announcements, but I'll let you go ahead and share stuff, and then I just got a few things to share. So.
Well, no, of course, the countdown to the elections is the big news, and a lot of things happening every day. And as we get to that point, and I hope everybody's intending to cast their vote and going to make an informed decision. And that's basically the big thing.
It is. It's a really big thing, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. I've never seen an election like this. And folks, remember, politics and elections was my life for 25 years. So, but with that, we had a workshop, I said, in Fort Lauderdale. Absolutely wonderful time with the people that were there. And again, they all had just mentioned how they're absolutely loving the new material that I'm bringing in. And also, I give a lot more time for us to get into good roundtable discussions with everybody that is there. And so the next workshop is here in Phoenix on November 7th. And again, would love to have you. I still have plenty of room for being able to bring people in. And it'll be an absolutely wonderful meeting because it's going to be the Saturday after the election. And we're going to be able to have a lot of good discussions about what had happened there. And I'll bring in the pertinent information that is there as well. And also what I'm mentioning, folks, is that remember, when I do the program, I do it through a PowerPoint presentation. And what I'm doing now is that I make that PowerPoint available a few days after the workshop for everybody that comes and attends the workshop. I give you a link on my website, and then the password, and you can download the PowerPoint program. And then so you can keep all the information, especially the reference material that's in there. And the people that have mentioned how they're really enjoying being able to have that kind of information available. So, well, Blanca, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we get into the program tonight?
No, I think you picked a good topic about the polls because we're seeing all kinds of different things, and I think your insight into polls might be an interesting discussion to share.
Okay. Well, folks, as I had mentioned, I spent close to, well, let's see, I spent 16 years of my own personal elections for my own legislative campaigns. And then I had worked, and I even ran a congressional campaign at one time. So I had been around elections for 25 years. And when I was in the legislature, elections law was one of my specialties, but how elections were run, the administration of elections and how they took place. And we always understood the importance of the polling. Now, a lot of the people, when you look at the election 4 years ago with Trump, how in the world did he win, or why were the polls so bad? Because nobody, hardly anybody, was projecting Trump to win. The vast majority of all the different, prognostists and the pollsters, they were all giving, Hillary a 90-95% probability that she was going to win. There were some of the polls that were credible polls that were showing her 8 to 10 points up even 3 and 4 days before the election. Well, you have to understand how polls are done. For the most part, if the information that they are gathering is reliable, the polls are the vast majority of the time are going to be in their probable errors of the 2 to 3% of what they're projecting. Now, 10 years ago, I had my last election for the Washington State Senate in 2010. And I had lost my election in 2006, which was an odd one. And I came back and ran 4 years later, and I ran against the same guy that had beat me in 2006. And we had lots of polls that were done because our race was a very important race in, determining who was going to have the majority in our state Senate. And so they were always watching what was going on. And one of the reasons it attracted me to come in, because they said about 10 months before the election, they had done a poll in our district, and they had said, Dave, your numbers are still very, very strong. And the bottom line is you're the only one that we could see that could win this election against the incumbent. We have polls that sometimes show that you're 3 and 5 points up, and sometimes you're only a point up. But that was, about 10 months out. When it came down to the last 3 weeks before the election, they had 4 different polls done, and all of them had my opponent and I pretty much dead even. I mean, within 1 or 2 points of each other. And when it came down to the finishing of the election, I lost the closest race in our state. Out of about 30,000 ballots that were cast, I lost by 462 votes. So I lost the closest election. Now, that was a blessing in disguise, folks, because, if I had won that election, I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. But there was a reason why I think I ran looking back, and it was a part of what was a good issue for me and part of my development. But I had learned firsthand the experience about polling and why they work and why they can be off. Now, let's go back and talk about the Trump election from 4 years ago. Now, here's what happens in polling. Now, I'm going to use an illustration that comes out of a congressional district. The first thing they're going to do, they're going to look at what is called the base vote of the district. They will go back to about 8 to 10 years of the elections every 2 years, and what percentage of the people vote for Republican and what percentage of the people vote for Democrat. Let's say this hypothetical congressional district is a swing district, which it goes both ways. So what's going to happen is about 1/3 of the people are going to be registered Republicans, and about 1/3 of the people are going to be registered Democrats, and about a third of them are going to be independent voters. They're not going to be registered or leaning heavily toward a party. And so in a district like that, they'll do what is called a 50-50 polling. They'll poll 50% of the people as registered Republicans, and then they'll poll 50% of the people as registered Democrats. In that, they're going to look at what is the percentage of the people who vote or how often they vote. They classify between what is called 1 of 4 voters to 4 of 4 voters. And what that means is they take the primary election and the general election every 2 years. So in a 4-year cycle, you have 4 elections, 2 primaries and 2 November general elections. And a 4 of 4 voter means they show up for all 4 of the elections. A 1 of 4 voter means they only show up once. They only vote in the presidential election, and that's the only one out of the 4. So they'll look at what are the percentages in that congressional district of how many they fit. So what percentage of the people are 4 of 4s? What percentage of the people are 3 of 4s, 2 of 4s, 1 of 4s, and stuff like that. That's how they bring so that they can get what is called an objective analysis based on past history of how that, and then they poll those people and they use those numbers, and out of that is what they get as their projections. Well, that's what they were doing on all the polls 4 years ago. And what they were showing was is that when they used that type of a sampling, balanced between the Republicans and the Democrats in the various states, and then using electoral college voting and how many people are going to show up to vote, it always came out that Hillary Clinton was way ahead of Trump. But here's what happened after the elections were over, and they went back and they did their analysis because the polling companies had said, why were we so far off base? Now, it's easy sometimes to come in and think, well, the polling companies are biased. They're going to lean one way or to the other, or they're basically not being very honest. They're going to cheat a little bit because they want to be biased to show a certain outcome. Good polling companies will never do that. Why? Because there are a number of credible polling companies out there. And if I'm a candidate, I want an honest poll. I want an accurate poll to show me a good, true picture. I don't want a fabricated picture. And if polling companies show that they cannot be reliable and says, what does their polling show and what is the results of the election after the election is over and how close was their polling? If they're way off all the time, nobody's going to hire them. They're in a competitive business, and political organizations are going to hire good, credible polling companies so they can have a trust of what the outcome is going to be. Well, here's what happened and why it was so far off 4 years ago. Trump attracted a very high percentage of what were called 0 of 4 voters. These are voters that are sick and tired of the political system. They think the political system is corrupt. They feel that their votes don't make any difference, and they just don't have any attraction to just voting for more of the corrupt political system. And then along comes a Donald Trump who uses his own money. He's not bought by the money, and he is not a politician. He was very attractive to the 0 of 4 voters, and there was a very high percentage of 0 of 4 voters that showed up to vote for Trump. And that's where he made the difference, because see, 0 of 4 voters don't show up in polls. And why is that? Because a pollster can say, well, we know there's going to be a percentage of 0 of 4 voters, but we can't trust their reliability. Are they or are they not going to show up when their voting history shows they never show up? So we don't poll people who show and have a history of not voting. And that's what made the difference, because Trump attracted these people. I was with a friend of mine about 4 days ago down in southern Florida, and I was explaining this to him, and he says, that's me. I hadn't voted in 8 years. And when Donald Trump came along, I voted for him. Because, Dave, you described me to the T. I felt like my vote doesn't matter. I don't want any more corrupt systems. I didn't care about having another Bush or a Clinton or an Obama in the election. I wasn't going to vote for any of them. And here comes Donald Trump, who's a non-politician. And I said, I'm going to give this guy a chance. And to me, he's proven himself. Now, personally, I think the same thing is going to happen again. We're seeing that the majority of the polls are favoring Biden. But I think the same thing is going to happen again, that Trump is going to attract, once again, a high percentage of the 0-4 voters. It was about 2 or 3 months ago, I read this article and I thought this was really interesting. Because see, remember, Trump has his rallies, and 30 to 50,000 people show up at these rallies. So basically, there were polling companies that went into and started going to multiples of these rallies and interviewing the people in these rallies. And here's what they found out. When of the people, and they did this with thousands of people at a number of different locations, on average, 17% of the people showing up at the Trump rallies were registered Democrats who were going to vote for Trump. 17%. But here's the bigger factor. 26% of the people at the rallies were 0 of 4 voters, other than they voted for him 4 years ago. So you're seeing he's getting this massive support again from those classified as 0 4 voters, and he's getting 15 to 17% of these people at these rallies are registered Democrats that are going to be voting for him. These are the people that are saying they don't want the political system, and Joe Biden is just a part of the political system. 47 years of being in politics, and they understand that basically Joe Biden is going to be a guy that's going to be somewhat controlled by the political system. Now, here's what's interesting also in this election. I have never seen such massive, what is called public service announcements or advertisements saying, get out and vote, get out and vote. Folks, we're hearing it everywhere. Get out and vote, get out and vote, get out and vote. When I was, yesterday, I flew from Florida here to Arizona. And I have a friend that's driving me from Boca Raton down to the Miami airport, and it's about a 50-mile drive. And as we're driving down the airport, here comes an airplane with, the big, huge banner that they carry behind them with this big, huge, massive announcement on it. These airplanes that fly the banners. And here was an airplane flying the banner saying, get out and vote, go vote, go vote. And I'm thinking, who's paying for that? It costs thousands of dollars to have these guys do this. And that's when it dawned on me, somebody is paying all of these advertising areas and these types of organizations to say, get out and vote. Who's putting up the money to do all of that? I have my opinion, because it's obviously going to want to come from a source that it doesn't look like they're packing or favoring the election when they are, because the money people behind it are believing if they can get a lot of people to show up to vote, they're probably going to vote for Biden versus Trump. I think it has a tendency to work the other way. I mean, but what they want is they want to make sure that the turnout is a very high turnout, because they feel that a high turnout is going to favor Biden in the election. And in my opinion, the person behind it is nobody other than George Soros. And why is that? It was about 6 months ago, I was able to see a video where Soros was in the meetings at Davos, Switzerland, which are the wealthiest people in the world, and they meet there. And he was actually interviewed. And these are also the people, and it's also where they propagate and push for their new world order. And Soros came right out and said, the vast majority of us here are in supportive of this new world order, a one world government, and Donald Trump is the one person that stands in our way. We need to do everything we can to make sure that he doesn't get elected in November. George Soros was saying that 6 months ago. And this is the guy that has billions and billions of dollars, and he spends millions of dollars in working against Trump. So obviously it's probably him and his organizations that are putting up the type of money, because remember, to have this much advertising going on, this isn't all just free, folks. The advertising companies, they have to get paid for all that. So somebody's paying them to put these massive ads out all over the place to say, get up and vote, and get up and vote. Okay? So hold on here just a second. I want to look at one of my emails. Okay, it is saying that Blog Chop Radio is real choppy. Folks, I'm doing the best that I can. The problem here is the internet connection. Okay, I've got a very poor internet connection where I'm at. But what will happen is, even though the internet connection is choppy, my understanding is the recording will come out very strong. So I think what we're seeing in this election is there is what's called untargeted money that is behind wanting to make sure the turnout is very, very strong in this election. And I also think we're going to see that Trump is going to do far better than what the polls are. It's going to be the same way that it was 4 years ago for him. He's going to do better than the polling because of the type of people that he attracts that typical politicians don't attract. Now with Blanca, that's basically all I wanted to say because everything else is just like, huh, so what on the elections? But those are a few little things that I could share with folks to understand how polling works and why they can be off and why Trump can still do so well and why we're seeing so much of this advertising to telling people to get out to vote. So why don't you come in, Blanca, and share with us your comments because you always got great comments to share with us. So.
Well, yes, and in terms of the polling, I tend to agree with your observations. And a lot of the people who didn't participate in elections is because they had given up on quote unquote politicians. And there's a lot of people who don't see Donald Trump as a politician. And so that also is an attractive characteristic to some voters. And then some of the accomplishments, even though they're not highly publicized by the mass media, there's alternative media that does communicate some of the, I think, major accomplishments that the president has done. And so the people who are listening to alternative media who understand some of the work that Trump has done are affected by that in terms of their vote.
Sure.
Now, if people are more dependent on just mainstream media, they don't hear about it. I bet if you ask people, has Trump been nominated for a peace prize, Nobel Prize, some people would say they would know. And it's actually, I think, 4 or 5 that he's been nominated.
Yes.
So, and you and I talked about it, depends on people's sources of information. They have a very different view of what's going on. And I don't think the polls take that into consideration either, that people are pretty polarized in terms of how they see reality.
It's interesting because you have to look at that. Trump has brought peace to the Middle East where no president has been able to do that for close to 25 to 30 years. He brought peace to North Korea when we had technically been in a Cold War with them for close to 50 years. And he's been able to do stuff that nobody else has been able to do. He has not had, he is the first president in almost 40 or 50 years to not have us in a war. And as much as people want to say about Obama, what a lot of people don't realize that Obama had bombed and killed hundreds of thousands of people during his tenure, and he could have chose to say, no, I'm not going to do that. He was a massive bombing, killing president, and people just don't think about that when you think of Barack Obama. So Trump is showing to be very practical in what he's doing and down to earth and practical in that stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, there was a headline that said Trump is causing peace to break out all over the Middle East.
Yeah, so
I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Good headline.
Well, I saw this little comment.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people who hadn't typically voted who are attracted to voting, and then you have the phenomenon that there's people who are crossing party lines, and so that mixes things up. And you and I talked about these massive Trump rallies, that there's also former Democrats attending those.
Yeah.
So that could be hard to catch also in the polling.
It is. It's very difficult. I saw this little comment on Facebook today, and I thought it was kind of hilarious. This guy was saying, if Trump wins the election, I'm leaving the country. And then he says, if Biden wins the election, I'm leaving the country. And he says, actually, I'm just going on a vacation overseas. Does anybody want to come with me? So, oh yeah, all the stuff that goes on. But we've seen the comments from different celebrities saying, if Trump wins the election, I'm leaving the country. And that was 4 years ago. Are they really going to do it this time? So
I doubt it.
yeah. Well, you and I had gotten into a discussion earlier about the other implications of this election from from what I would call an energetic and a spiritual based side of the election, or a consciousness issues of the election. I've never seen an election like this. Never. This is one that has the ability that whoever wins, because see, to me, this isn't about an election that's about the personality of Donald Trump versus the personality of Joe Biden. And this isn't even so much an election that's about the Republicans having a president or the Democrats having a president. To me, This is an election that has the ability to totally set a precedence of where the history of this country is going to go with its impact around the world for the next 20 to 30 years. Now, I'm going to tell you what is my opinion. In my opinion, if Joe Biden wins this election, you're going to see that he is basically going to be uh, he's going to be controlled. He will be controlled by the money, and especially with all the new information that is coming out on his son Hunter's laptop. This man is going to be so controlled by outside forces that I don't think that we're going to see any question that the power elite of the money that want to bring in their new world order, you're going to find a massive push toward that and even high steps toward moving in that direction if Biden gets elected. And Trump is the one that will say no to that, and he has. I think it's about our sovereignty as a country versus being a part of a larger new world order. That is really what this election is about. It's about our freedom, our true freedom, and our sovereignty, or losing that true freedom and surrendering to the stronger power and control of the cabal elite. That's what this election is about to me. Blanca, share your thoughts on that, because you had some great comments on that as well.
Well, it does seem that way. One of the things that you've always talked about, and we've talked about it, and it's a major part of the discussion in your workshops, is this evolution of consciousness of humanity. And we use different language, different models to talk about it. Sometimes we call it, the matrix is breaking down and a new one is coming up, or sometimes we use the language of timeline, that you can kind of see that people are living in different timelines or different realities. And so depending on the reality that, or timeline that the voters are on or the people are on, is how they're going to vote. And there's one timeline that, or reality or matrix, we can say, where there is an expansion of awareness. There is a move towards more freedom for humanity, more prosperity. The whole limitation and scarcity model will be relaxed. And so we will be on a different timeline or reality where the challenges are still there because we're ever growing, ever expanding, but they're going to be of a different nature because we've learned the lessons of limitation, we've learned the lessons of polarization, etc. And there's another timeline where people are still very much in that model, the model of limitation, the model of where authority tells you what to do, a model of fear, these sort of things. And so when you and I discuss it, we kind of see the behavior and even the candidates as representing a different reality or a different timeline. And that's up for us to discern because we need to ask ourselves, okay, which timeline are we on? And we even joked about it that some of the polls are wrong because they need to ask people, first of all, what timeline are you on?
Yeah.
And then go from there.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting also. It was about, probably around 2 months ago, I had seen an article by a major journalist, and he had attended or had been not attended, but he had been involved in both of the national conventions, the Republican and the Democrat conventions. Now, obviously, they didn't have the physical conventions, but it was mostly, they were pretty much virtual. But he had been covering political conventions for decades, and he said the same thing. He had never seen one, a year, where there was such absolute contrast in, and I'm going to use the term, the energy around the two different parties of their national conventions. He said when you went to the Republican convention, the primary theme there that people rallied around was the love for America. It was a deep expression of the love for America, and that was the main theme at the Republican National Convention. And you went to the Democrat National Convention, the main theme and the energy was around the hatred of Donald Trump. It wasn't pro Joe Biden. It was hatred toward Donald Trump. And this journalist had said in decades he had never seen such deep contrast. And I think that's interesting because, see, our thoughts put out this energy and we create with that. And what we're seeing is a deep contrast. And I'm not here trying to be pro-Republican or Democrat. That's just the reality of what is taking place in this cycle. But what you saw was Republicans being very positive, rallying around a very positive message of the love for America. And we're still seeing it in these thousands of people that show up at the Trump rallies. And then you get over on the Democrat side, Biden's lucky if he gets 200 to 300 people showing up at his rallies. But the thing that draws all those people together, it's not pro-Joe Biden, it's hatred toward Donald Trump. So what we're seeing are these two really differing, energetic, conscious contrasts that are going on in the election this year. And that is what concerns me personally, is because whichever energy of these two wins and prevails in the election is going to set the precedence for its outcome of what's going to come out of that. And hatred produces hatred, and love produces love. And I'm saying, folks, forget the political philosophy differences, okay? That, yes, I was a Republican the years I was in the legislature, but I've been on both sides of the fence. I've pretty much, for the most part, was a moderate in how I had done that. And I'm even willing to say that, when President Obama ran his first time, I voted for a Democrat. I voted for Obama. And the reason I did that is because I knew what I call the shadow world reality of John McCain. And I thought, yes, John McCain on the surface had this nice appearance, but behind it, John McCain was a puppet to the military-industrial complex in the New World Order movement. And if John McCain would have been elected president, he would have taken us into a nuclear World War III without a doubt. And I knew that, and that's why I felt I couldn't vote for John McCain. 4 years later, when it was Obama and Mitt Romney, I still voted for Obama because I knew that Mitt Romney was a man that was controlled by Wall Street. He was deeply controlled by the cabal money, and he was a puppet of the cabal money, and he was involved in that as a business by his own personal business for a number of years. And it's even showing now that he's a senator. He's probably the least supportive Republican senator for Trump. He comes out against Trump. So I was willing to I was looking at practical results more than I was the political philosophy that I'd been a part of for close to 30 years. And that's why even this time around, to me, there's a complete difference in the energy that we're going to see coming out of a Donald Trump versus a Joe Biden in this election. And this one is extremely critical. And folks, and I'm not the only one that's saying that. There are a number of other highly conscious people that are saying the same thing that I'm saying, that they're saying there is such a massive difference in the conscious energy that's coming out of this election based on who's going to win, Trump or Biden. And what you're seeing, the vast majority of those people saying that are on Trump's side, because it's not about the personality of Donald Trump. It's about the energy of what he represents and what comes out of it. So, okay, Blanca, back to you.
But I think what you're saying is correct. If we look at it from an energetic level, like you say, love is a very different energy than hate or fear. And so, yes, you can pack into that. Now, when you say love for America, when people say love for America, they'll say, well, I like the freedoms, or I like the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. I love freedom of speech. I love tolerance. I love opportunity. I love these sort of things is what they'll say. I love being with my neighbors, having a good time. And then the opposite, if it's fear, well, you fear or you see only the faults of America. And so that's a very different thing. So now as humans, we all have faults, but we have so many gifts to evolve and to grow and to love and to share with each other. And these are the lessons that we're hopefully have learned. And so I see this election as kind of like an external manifestation of an internal process that is going on within all of humanity, really. But for some reason, it's just really, really highlighted in America right now. So it's a very interesting thing. It's going to be a very interesting thing. And then after the elections come out, it's even going to be more interesting to process it, whatever happens, to process it, because it's going to be, I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit difficult. And so we're just going to have to remember the timeline that we're on and what we're aiming to create, a timeline that brings more opportunity, more freedom, less of the artificial restraints imposed upon us, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Are we ready to go to the callers?
Excuse me?
Are we ready to go to the callers? I think I've pretty much said everything I wanted to say tonight.
Okay. Yes,
Okay.
it's because it is choppy. I couldn't tell what you were
Okay,
saying.
yeah.
I didn't know if you were going to ask for questions to see if anyone had questions or.
Yeah, let's do that. Folks, if you want to call in, if you want to have a question or make a comment, the call-in number is 515-605-9356. Again, that's 515-605-9356. And we do have one person here that has raised his hand. Area code 650. We'll go right to that and we'll see if that was something that the person wanted to do. Okay, and I'm working on bringing that person in. Okay, area code 650, you're on the air. What can we help you with tonight? I don't think that was someone that wanted to come on the air. It almost sounded like it was someone that was sleeping or snoring. Well, I better not say anything more about that. But,
Wrong timeline.
I know, wrong timeline. That's true. They're on the wrong timeline, aren't they? Well, folks, okay. And the program's been going for almost 40 minutes tonight, and I'm kind of getting ready to wrap the program up because these are the ones I'd like to keep a little bit shorter. But if anybody else would like, to call in or make a comment, yeah, let's do this quickly in the next couple of minutes. Otherwise, I'm ready to call it a program tonight. Blanca, anything else you'd like to share with us? Any of your other thoughts?
No, I don't think so.